BBC Sounds. Music, radio, podcasts.
Hello, I'm Amy Canavan and this is the Scottish Football Podcast. Apologies to Celtic fans, but here's what's on the agenda today.
It might break here to Mitchell! Slams it home! And Borussia Dortmund have hit Celtic for 7. It is Dortmund 7, Celtic 1, and the suffering just goes on and on for Scotland's champions here.
We'll analyse what went wrong for Rodgers' side in Dortmund and ask what that result means for their Champions League campaign going forward.
It was a tough watch, to be honest. We weren't quite at our best, and they showed why they're a top team.
And another manager who doesn't have his troubles to see.
It's a testing time. It's a testing time for me. It's a testing time for the squad. The injuries are there for everyone to see, and you can talk about them all day. For me, it's better to talk about the ones who are going to play.
We'll discuss the Scotland squad amid testing times for Steve Clarke.
The Scottish Football Podcast from BBC Sport Scotland.
There really is so much to discuss on this Wednesday morning with former Celtic striker Cillian Sheridan and St Mirren's under-18 coach Stephen McGinn. Good morning to you guys. For starters, if you could sum up last night's performance and result in one word, what would that word be, Cillian?
I think a lot of people have been using the word sobering. Probably an eye-opener as well to kind of the levels that are needed in Champions League. Celtic have been flying this season, getting all the plaudits, and then I think this is probably time they have to take it as well on the chin. They came up against a team that were just levels above. I think Brendan Rodgers probably backed the team to try and go toe-to-toe with a team like Dortmund. They were the finalists last year, and look, it's a game where Celtic every single player needs to be on their top game. Everyone needs to be ticking. Dortmund maybe need to have a little bit of an off night to really go and like a lot of people were talking about winning there and stuff, but I think if they got a point, it was probably a really good result. So if you look at it like that, but look, it's not all doom and gloom. It's been a good start to the league. It's to have the 3 points already under their belt in the Champions League. So it's not a nice scoreline and everything like that, but it's also not the end of the world either, I don't think.
Stephen, what's your word choice this morning for it?
Shock. I expected it to be closer. Celtic have taken heavy ones over the years in the Champions League, but sometimes you've came across the great Barcelona team with Messi, Suarez, Neymar. There's been Lewandowski's involved. Don't think Dortmund are that kind of super team. I think they are a bit in transition. I think they're up and down domestically. I thought that Borussia Dortmund would win in Germany, but I didn't expect it to be quite as sore. Even Celtic started the game really well. The first time Dortmund got on the ball, it was boom penalty, and you're thinking, here we go again in Europe. Then you get back into the game with Maida, and then it felt like every time Dortmund got the ball, they looked like they could score, and it was shock's a word, because Celtic couldn't have gone into it in better form.
Sobering, eye-opening and shock, 3 cracking words to kick off with. And before we dig in more with Stephen and Cillian, let's run through the latest Scottish football headlines. As we have mentioned, Celtic suffered an embarrassing 7-1 defeat away to Borussia Dortmund in the Champions League. St Johnstone have appointed former Motherwell and Finland midfielder Simo Valakari as their new head coach. He replaces Craig Levein, who was sacked a fortnight ago. Scotland head coach Steve Clarke has given first call-up to Nicky Devlin, Liam Lindsley and Andy Irvine amid what he describes as a horrendous run of injuries. And Romanian playmaker Ines Hadji is back in the Rangers first team after being frozen out, while utility man Dujon Sterling has signed a contract extension with the club to keep him at Ibrox until 2028 at least. Right then, let's get back to that disastrous night in Dortmund, although perhaps not as disastrous as some may suggest, Cillian. But other than the obvious, the scoreline, the goals, where and when did it go wrong for Celtic last night? I mean, was it in the attitude? Was it in the approach? Was it in the way that you sort of alluded to it earlier, the way that they wanted to attack the game and attack Dortmund? Where and when did the red flag start showing?
Obviously early on when Dortmund scored so early, but the game just kind of got away from them. It unravelled a bit. Celtic, probably they wouldn't have come up against a team that really pressed with that intensity. Dortmund's full midfield and attackers just right up on from the word go. They were relentless. And like I said, everyone needed to be on their game 100%, and some probably weren't. Some maybe were a little bit shocked by what they came up against. I think like the whole back four really probably wouldn't have played against attackers and midfielders with that sort of movement and awareness, strength, speed, everything. And was probably maybe a bit eye-opening for some, but that's the level. That's a top Champions League team that you're playing against. And I think just it was a factor of both of those things. Celtic not getting to their A game and Dortmund really hitting theirs. And then that just shows the gulf between those teams, I think, which unfortunately it happened on one night, and that's the kind of scoreline you get.
You mentioned the word relentless. It was a word very much used on Saturday night for Celtic's rampant win against St Johnstone, Stephen, and I think this is where a lot of criticism starts to bleed in for Brendan Rodgers, isn't it? The fact that he attacked the same way that he did against St Johnstone on Saturday and the same way he did against Dortmund last night. How much of the blame that has been laid at Rodgers' door, and there has been quite a lot last night, do you think is justified? How much responsibility, though, as well, do you think then takes fold with the players? You know, these are still top level players. Celtic spending a lot of money compared to anyone else in Scotland to try and compete at this level, and instead sort of cramming into their shell a little bit and still conceding 7. Where does the blame sort of divvy out for you?
Blames everyone. Everyone gets the blame. A night like last night, there's games where you maybe lose 2-1, where there's maybe been a subs or a tactical tweak from the bench that wasn't the right thing, or there's been a defensive howler where he's cost an individual player's cost the team the game. A night like last night's everyone's fault. I actually didn't have any problem the way Celtic went into the game. They couldn't be playing any better. They went to Dortmund to have a go. It's the way the game can unfolded. It was sometimes, I mean, we've been to Celtic Park and Ibrox a long time over my career. You go into these games, you're always fearful of a night like last night when it can get heavy. You're very respectful of playing against better players. And it wasn't, obviously it's easy to point to the 2 goals inside 10 minutes. Probably the first couple of times Dortmund went up the park. The bit that was alarming for me was the space that Cillian Brandt had. Played against good Celtic teams for a long time, and big messages before the game. Don't let Tom Rogic get the ball, for example, in space. Don't let him get at the heart of your team, especially early on. Don't let them get into their rhythm. Dortmund are, as I said, they've come off the back of a season. They got to Champions League final, but they've been up and down. They've been searching for their best form, their best formations. They've taken a few heavy ones. They look a bit ropey at the back. Celtic allowed them to get into their rhythm. They allowed it to get to their best players. And I think Neil Lennon touched on it in commentary, even when it's 2-1, they were still in the game because they didn't look defensively confident. And then once it gets to 3-1, you have to get to half-time 3-1. Leave the goalie with the ball, stop chasing the goalie. The goalie's not the problem. If the goalie's got the problem, it's not Cillian Brandt. Who cares? It's not Adeyemi at the edge of your box. Let's stay compact. Let's get in at half-time. We've got a really good manager. He'll fix us. But once it goes 4-5, I mean, you're absolutely shot to pieces. It's anything, and then the blame is shared across the board. So, as I said, really sore night, but they have to take the lessons. If you go to Atalanta, they've got the quality to score 2 inside 20 minutes out of nothing. You can't just go chasing the game and let them pick you off.
We'd run out of time and could spend the entire podcast going through the damning stats that came out of last night's game. A few eye-catching ones for sure. Brendan Rodgers is the only manager to see his side concede 7 goals in a Champions League match more than once, losing 7 to Barcelona in 2016 and 7 to Paris Saint-Germain in 2017. The Celtic manager spoke to the media last night. As usual, here's what he had to say.
We went in high in confidence. The team's been playing ever so well. So we felt in a really, really good place. But I think we needed to start the game much better than we did. We gave away cheap goals, and like I say, if you we analysed the game back, we just there's certainly issues positionally that we would have to be better in, and like I say, we got punished for passes and loose bits of play, which at this level, like you've seen tonight, they will punish you, and it was absolutely ruthless in the finishing. It's absolutely incredible to see, and unfortunately for us, we were on the back of it. Listen, it's very, very difficult for us to get to that level. It's a different level, with the greatest respect. But what we'd want to be is more competitive than we were tonight. I think that was what was disappointing from our perspective. But my job's now to go away and inspire the players again, and like I say, we analyse and you need to learn from it, or else you can really get punished at this level.
A lot to come out of not just that clip, Stephen, but just in general from Brendan Rodgers. And again, I think the line that's sort of sticking out is that he was asked if he would change his approach, if he should have changed his approach mid-game, and he said no, that he won't, and that he will continue to sort of attack these games the way that he did. I know you mentioned there that you were quite happy the way that Celtic did approach the game and went into it given the run that they are on, but should there have been a distinct change of approach at half-time perhaps, or at least 60 minutes in, as I say, to try and keep that scoreline down? What do you make of his comments?
The frustrating thing for the second half was Dortmund took the foot off the gas in terms of Celtic lost 2 bad goals in the second half. I just think that, I mean, it's, can you go and press St Johnstone for 95 minutes? Yeah, of course you can. Can you do it to Dortmund? Can you go and chase the goalkeeper without them getting in for 95 minutes? Maybe Dyson Maida could, but I don't think everyone else can. Sometimes you just, especially, I mean, no Cameron Carter-Vickers as well, getting into the game, Boston Trustee's second start for Celtic, new partnership. Okay, do we need to be a bit more compact? Because you don't, I mean, playing at Celtic Park, I know Kyogo makes some brilliant runs, but there's never a lot of grass for them to run into, especially earlier on. Sometimes you can attack without... I think Celtic's pace would have really hurt Dortmund in the counter-attack at times, even if they'd been in that compact shape and exposed them. I thought Dyson Maida was an outball all night in what was a depressing night. But yeah, as I said to you, Brendan Rodgers would have analysed Dortmund. He'd have realised we can get at this defence, but there's got to be periods in the match where you're just going, right, okay, they're not getting through here.
As you mentioned, Cillian, it's not all doom and gloom. It's a fantastic start to the league season for Celtic, the domestic front all round. They of course do have the 3 points on the board already in the Champions League group phase. Just to round this league phase rather, that's old habits. Just to round this little section off, how sort of optimistic are you still that Celtic can qualify? Yeah,
I think it's still after 2 games. If you told them they're going to have 3 points after those 2 fixtures, you're like, yeah, we're on track. That's where we plan to be. The investment in the squad isn't to go and, realistically, it's not to go and beat Dortmund away. It's to go and beat Slovan Bratislava at home and the rest of their home games probably. Atalanta is going to be another tough one. Like Brendan Rodgers has already said, he's not going to change his style. Don't really think he should. If he backs it, he backs it. And again, I think it's just the scoreline. Yeah, is obviously it's embarrassing for everyone, but in the grand scheme of where they are this season, it's compared to last season. They're miles ahead in terms of that. It's not, like I said before, it's not all doom and gloom. Yeah, it's so, and it's embarrassing, but it could have come at a worse time, really. I think that the squad will bounce back. I think Brendan Rodgers has bounced back from results like that before, and I'm kind of looking forward to see how they are.
Moving on, Steve Clarke has named his Scotland squad for the upcoming Nations League doubleheader against Croatia and Portugal. John McGinn, Scott McKenna, Tommy Conway miss out, as do many, many others through injury. First call-ups, as I mentioned earlier, for Nicky Devlin, Liam Lindsay and Andy Irvine. First off, Stephen, the big news, not only no doubt in the McGinn family, the entire Scotland family. No John McGinn. How is John? How is his injury?
Yeah, well, it was just a hamstring injury. Knew right away. Hamstrings, it's 4 to 6 weeks. 4 if it's not too bad. So yeah, he's disappointing. Obviously, love's going away with Scotland. Took a lot of positives out the last campaign, and disappointed he's going to miss the games. Obviously, club level, they've got a massive game tonight against at home to Bayern Munich, first Champions League game at Villa Park. So devastated at missing that in some of the games, but it's part and parcel. He's been fortunate over the last few years with injury and just needs to take it on the chin.
What his absence does allow, though, is for new players to come in, players to step up, not only in the squad but in the side as well. A couple of fresh names in there. As I say, the likes of Nicky Devlin, Liam Lindsay, Andy Irvine, Cillian. How much excitement do you see in that Scotland squad? I know it was one that Steve Clarke said it was one of the toughest he's had to name, but sometimes over the years people sort of look at Steve Clarke and say it's sheer loyalty, and you don't see those fresh faces. Now there has to be a bit of excitement in there, doesn't there?
Yeah, I think he's starting to show it. He does have that loyalty, but he's also willing to go and take players who are performing well and deserve it. Nicky Devlin's probably the one that we all see more often than the others, week in, week out. So I think he's fully deserving of it. I'm presuming some of the younger ones who have stuck with the under-21s, I think maybe that's for the benefit of the under-21s team, maybe.
They've got big games coming up, don't they?
I think maybe they were unlucky in other circumstances. Maybe they would have been called up. But I think he's kind of shown that if you go out and perform well in whatever club you're at, that you've got a chance of getting called up. And there's nothing worse than if you're playing well week in, week out, and you're not getting a sniff of it, or there's no chance. It can be a bit demoralising. So I think for those kind of players, and probably more so Nicky Devlin doing it up here in Scotland, will give hope to a lot of other players in the league.
So when you look at that squad announcement, Stephen, isn't it, and you see names like the club names like Torino and Napoli, okay, this time we don't have Aston Villa, but that's where you start to realise, though, that it is this level above now. When you've got Scott McTominay flying over in Italy, and Shea Adams certainly has made a great start to life over there with Torino, it does bring a little bit of a smile to the face, doesn't it, when, okay, we're missing some other names, but seeing those sort of clubs, our internationals playing for those sort of clubs, that's a step up.
Yeah, and we want even more for the younger guys. It's brilliant. Young Scottish players are wanted around Europe, and I think it's a brilliant experience. I think it makes them better players. It feels, this current squad, it feels a little bit like almost like a stopgap in terms of it being such a big double header for the under-21s. I think it's great from Steve Clarke that he's allowing Scott Gemmell to have these players. Beezy, the run we're on the national team, to just say, no, look at the amount of injuries I've got. I need a Lennon Miller, so I need to blood something. I need some positivity around this camp. He's going, no, it's going to be 2 really tough games, but I played in something similar with the under-21s. We played, and it was a playoff at the time to get to a major tournament, and we just fell short. I know how much I took from the experience of losing, never mind what the boys could get from winning and getting to play at a major tournament at under-21 level. It's been such a long time since we did it as a national team, and I think it's long spoke about the progression. The youth teams need to be better for us then to have a stronger first team. So the names we've got dropping back to in under-21s, they're playing at home at Tynecastle against a team that we've beaten in Belgium. So it'd be great if the boys could get a brilliant crowd and something to look forward to in terms of a major tournament for the under-21s.
Finally, before we go, former Motherwell midfielder Simo Valakari has been appointed as the new head coach of St Johnstone, replacing Craig Levine. Cillian, it's one of your former clubs, isn't it? What do you make of the appointment?
To be honest, I don't know too much about him. Be surprised if a lot of people did. But yeah, look, it's good to see clubs kind of branching out into into different areas for new managers. A lot of people complain about this merry-go-round of the same guys, so it is refreshing to see someone new, a new face. Sometimes that's what's needed at clubs here. So yeah, look, hopefully it'll bring a fresh kind of bounce to the team. They've probably been a little bit unlucky in how their results have been this year. They haven't really been, obviously take away the Celtic game, they haven't been totally out of games from what I've seen. So I think he's coming into a club that's looking to start things new and start things fresh. So for both sides, I think it can work out pretty well.
Yeah, he wants to create something special. It's quite a task he has on his hands, though, Stephen, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a risky appointment. I think watching St Johnstone so far this season, I think he's got a lot of work to do. He's got a lot of work to do quickly. They have to be more organised, harder to beat for a start, because you're looking at the quality of some of the teams round about them. You can't believe that Hearts and Kilmarnock will continue in the current veins. They'll pick up. So it's something new for the league. Obviously, I remember him from the sticker books all those years ago at Motherwell. He'll come in with fresh face, bit of positivity, but he has to get to know the club and the opponents very quickly, because, as I said, the teams around him will start to pick up. You look at Ross County at the start of the season, probably think they'd be one of their challengers. I've been really impressed with the work Don Cowie's doing. So he's got a big job in his hands, and good luck to him.
Well, that is a rapid 20 minutes flying in, and that's all we've got time for. Many thanks to Cillian, Sheridan and Stephen McGinn, and thank you for listening. Remember, we're here with new episodes of the Scottish Football Podcast bright and early every day, so to make sure you don't miss out, subscribe on BBC Sounds. Until next time, we'll see you later.
This is the shocking moment English football has been dreading.
My name is Moses Swabu, and I used to be a professional footballer. But then I got in deep with organised crime and became a match fixer operating in the English League.
A match-fixing investigator has highlighted 2 matches he says appear to have suspicious betting patterns.
How honest are you going to be with me? This is 100%. Join me for Sports Strangest Crimes presents Confessions of a Match Fixer. Listen on BBC Sounds.